The city of Buffalo, New York is still reeling from this weekend's mass shooting at a local supermarket as residents struggle to come to grips with the deadly attack. Investigators are working to learn more about the suspect, who they say is a self-described white supremacist who targeted black people. So here now to help us dig a little bit deeper into this investigation is Mary Ellen O'Toole. She's a retired FBI special agent and the director of the Forensic Sciences program at George Mason University. Mary Ellen, it's really good to see you. We haven't seen you in a while, which is probably actually a good thing, right?
Yes.
We haven't had a reason to talk to you about these sorts of people, but I'm glad you're here now. So in regards to the investigation, what are investigators looking for, and how soon might we see hate crime or terror charges filed? Because right now he's just up, I think, on a single murder charge.
Well, right now, I would say investigators are trying to be as comprehensive as possible to look for all of the evidence that contributed to this crime. So they'll be going through social media. They will be talking to people. They'll be doing a lot of interviews. They want to make sure that they have a comprehensive picture of who this person is and how far back the planning went and how extensive the planning was, which appears to be pretty extensive.
So, Mary Ellen, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say that investigation may not correlate in time-wise with when the prosecutors charge this individual. So these two things may happen at different times.
So, as you know, Mary Ellen, law enforcement officials say the suspect visited the store ahead of the shooting. We've reported that. And again, I'm going back to this discussion that some people are already starting to have about mental health. But when you see the actions as described by law enforcement, they seem very methodical. They seem very thought out. Even the manifesto to you and I and to Anne-Marie looks like a lot of gibberish and crazy talk. But it's not the work of a person who has, and I'm not an expert, but it doesn't strike me as the work of somebody who's got mental health issues. It strikes me as the work of somebody who's methodically thinking through things that he's been exposed to, putting them on paper, and then carrying out those acts.
Well, I think you're exactly right. And going back to cases as far back to 1966 with Charles Whitman, and I actually did some work on that case, obviously post-1966. But you have to look at the offender's behavior, the shooter's behavior as they plan the crime and as they carry it out. And what we saw in this shooting in Buffalo is somebody that was thinking very strategically during the course of committing the crime. He was not reportedly running through the store yelling incomprehensible statements. I mean, he was methodical, and the amount of planning went back apparently for a long period of time. But I think even more importantly is that we know from these kinds of cases that the thinking that precedes the actual crime can go back days, weeks, months, even years. So the ideation really precedes the act of violence. But what I look for in assessing these cases is how strategic and well planned out was the crime. And in this case, to me, there's no question that this was very strategic and it was very well planned out.
We were talking earlier to a professor, and one of the things that Vlad sort of asked about are parents, loved ones, people close to this individual. Should they bear some sort of responsibility? And so I want to ask you, sometimes we talk to parents and they go, oh, he was a happy child, or I would never hurt a fly, and you listen to them talk and you think, were you living with the same person? Can you talk to me a little bit about red flags that people close to him may or may not have seen, whether or not they are as pronounced as you think they would be when you're looking at it from a distance? Like, would somebody close to him be able to predict this sort of behavior?
So, great questions. Prediction is not something that we can achieve at this point in threat assessment, but we can prevent. So prevention is possible, prediction is not possible at this point. However, having said that, the red flags are critical. And red flags have been published for many years. And these red flag behaviors are out there for parents and for teachers. The problem is, if people see the red flags, do they feel comfortable reporting on them? Do they feel comfortable calling law enforcement and saying, I have a relative that's manifesting these behaviors, and I'm very concerned about them. That's the issue.
It is absolutely fascinating. And the fact that NPR reports that the gun that the suspect allegedly used in the shooting was purchased months after police ordered him to undergo a psychiatric evaluation, and the owner of that shop that sold him the gun says nothing came up in his background check.
I know.
So how is that possible?
Well, that's possible because a person can have a mental health assessment, and that would not show up on their record. So many people go in for mental health counseling, they go in for assessments, but those kinds of things don't show up on their record, so it would not interfere.
Right, but Mary Ellen, if I am asked to go to undergo a psychiatric evaluation because I make a threat of using a weapon in my school or against my friends or my community or whatever, if I say that here at work and I'm forced to undergo a psychiatric treatment or evaluation, and then they say, well, he's okay, shouldn't that somewhere be noted? And again, I'm not an expert on medical records or the law.
I think that's part of the challenge, Mary Ellen, and you can sort of help us out, is, as you point out, a lot of people go in for a mental health assessment. Maybe, you know, you had a kid and you're suffering from postpartum depression, but then you pull out of it.
But not when you make a threat, hey.
But how much private health details do we include and allow any sort of random gun shop owner to have access to?
We have a reasonable right to privacy, right, Mary Ellen? But if you make a threat and then that threat involves using a weapon, and then 6 months later or a year later you're able to buy that weapon, that's my question. I don't know. Like if we're having this discussion because we're curious to your thoughts.
I'm curious about the legal challenges. Yeah. Because it seems like a no-brainer to us, but clearly this happens over and over again. So there must be a reason why the idea of a red flag law or why this sort of information is not easily available.
Well, your discussion is really quite good, as a matter of fact. So what it comes down to is you can go in, you can make a threat. You would be so, I think, surprised to know how many people every day make threats of violence and threats of violence involving explosives or guns. If you're not charged or if you're not committed to a mental health facility, there's not going to be a record of it, which means that you can therefore go into a gun store and purchase a weapon, and they'll look to see if there's anything in your background, and if it's not there because it wasn't charged, then they're going to be able to go ahead and sell you the firearm. So that is a problem in our system. But again, many people make threats. The vast majority of people that make threats involving guns, threats involving bombs, they never carry out those threats. So where do we go from here? The issue is family members and friends of those individuals that continue down the pathway of violent ideation, thoughts of violence, and plans to carry out violent acts. They have to monitor their loved ones. There's just no question about it. Law enforcement can't be on top of thousands and thousands of people that do this every day who will never end up making a threat. So being able to identify those warning behaviors, more importantly, picking up the phone and calling someone and saying, I'm really concerned, enough to say just this much: we have guns in our household and we need law enforcement to come and temporarily remove them. And New York is a red flag state, which means that you can call law enforcement and have those firearms removed temporarily until you're more comfortable with your loved one getting help for that kind of thinking process.
It's fascinating. Yeah. I mean, we live in a country where if you accidentally miss a payment on your credit card, you get dinged, you can't buy a house, or your interest rates go up, but you can have what we're talking about here with this individual and then still go out and buy a gun. Mary Ellen O'Toole, thank you very much as always. It's great to talk to you because you bring such insight and clarity to subjects that, you could tell we don't really know. We're asking questions because you're the expert. Thank you so much.
Thank you.